What's going on, guys? It's the Sports Past, Present, and Future podcast with me, Turner Schaus, and Landon Pugh. Today we've got a special guest, Kelly Wells, Athletic Director of Morehead State. So, I call him Coach because he coached for Pikeville too, and we'll get into that. So, Coach, how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I would prefer you call me Coach. That's the go-to for me. Thankful to be called that for the rest of my time. So please feel free to do that. And, the journey to where I'm at today has been just that, a journey. So I, was a college basketball player, fell in love with sports at an early age. And in order to continue my sporting career after my playing career stopped, it was to get into coaching. Was blessed to have some really, really good teams and some really good players along the way. And, got into coaching basketball and did that for just shy of 16 years, and then I moved into the athletic world at the University of Pikeville in a directorship role, doing both coaching and being an athletic director, and then I shifted gears to just being athletic director at UPike, and then that led me to Morehead State University, where I'm acting athletic director now.
Mm-hmm. So, going to your playing days, what athletes did you look up to growing up, or who motivated you to keep staying in the sports world?
Well, my father was a basketball coach. He actually started women's basketball at Morehead State, and that's really where I fell in love with just athletics and basketball and playing, coaching, all of the stuff that goes with it. He dragged me to work with him in the mornings, and I'd stay in the gym all day playing and trying to get better. And, the girls on the team would stay at our house in the summertime, and we would work out, and they would kind of teach me the game a little bit. And, some of my idols growing up, which is going to be super weird to you guys, as young as you all are, Rex Chapman was someone I looked up to and idolized as I was growing and playing in Kentucky. And the other person was Dominique Wilkins. Back in the day, we only got the Turner Broadcast Network, and the Atlanta Hawks were what played all the time at our TV. And number 21, Dominique Wilkins, was the guy I loved to watch.
My dad's definitely going to love that you said both of those, because he talks about them, both of them, in the house, and of course I've gotten the highlight reels, so I've grown up watching those too. So those were two perfect dancers from Will Schaus right there.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
No, we're the same, somewhat the same generation. He's a little younger than I am, but certainly follow a lot of the same people.
Oh yeah. So this is a perfect transition with your playing days. So whenever you transitioned to coaching, did you apply like certain workouts that you did as a player to your team's like off-season or preseason workouts?
Yeah, I think so. I think coaching and playing both are just kind of things that you fall in love with, certain things that you've learned over time or you've seen over time. I don't think any coach, I should say there's probably a coach, but there's none that I know that invented a whole lot of things that go with basketball. I think we've all kind of stolen from other people and other sources and then tried to modify to fit our needs, and I'm certainly in that case. So if I found workouts I liked as a player that I'd seen or I'd been to a camp, and I tried to emulate that in my workouts. The same would go when I was coaching. I'd find things that I felt like worked my style and kind of fit it to my personality and molded it into what worked for me. So, not an inventor of anything, but certainly I was smart enough to be able to steal from really good people.
Mm-hmm. So you've been around basketball for a while now. What made you want to be an athletic director?
I would have never ever said, my goal in life is to be a director of athletics. I don't know that was kind of ever in the cards of my imagination. I think over time I just fell in love with college athletics. More importantly, mentoring and student athletes and coaches. I don't apologize. I'm probably leadership role more of operate off a family model than I do maybe a business model, because the best parts of the job for me are impacting student athletes in a good way and impacting coaches in a good way. So don't know that was ever my destination type job, but I have absolutely fallen in love with everything about it. I enjoy working in our community. I enjoy working with our athletics program, and I'll never ever lose sight of the most important thing, and that's the student-athlete experience.
Mm-hmm. So you coached high school before Pikeville, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So what were some of the biggest adjustments that you had to make from high school to college?
I think that's a good question. I enjoyed coaching at the high school level. I was at Marion County High School in a championship environment. I coached at Mason County High School in a championship environment. We were able to win regional and state championships at those institutions, at those levels. Had great players. I think moving to the college game, I missed the process a little bit, because when you're a high school coach, you get to see those kids generating from your ball camps at a small age into your AAU system, into your middle school programs, and then into your high school, and you kind of got to see that level of development. College is much quicker. It's a maximum 4 to 5 year, and now in today's world, you're lucky to have a kid for 8 months. So like that has really intensified and gotten quicker. So I think missing a little bit of that process and the impact opportunities was the biggest change. Basketball is certainly basketball. We didn't make a ton of changes between what our philosophy was as a high school coach to where we were as a college coach. The game does change a little bit. It becomes more of an individualized game in college to some degree than it did at a high school. But I had players at Mason County that we ran a whole lot of the same type things as we did when we were in college. So basketball was kind of the same. You have your days more in college. You're not teaching classes, and you're not doing that part of it in college as much. However, I did teach a class every year I was a college coach. But it certainly is a different timeline and a lot more freedom in terms of your day.
Mm-hmm. So, talking about Mason County and you coaching Chris Lofton on that state championship team, you were just talking about it like with development with high school. Like, when was the time where you could see that Chris was going to be a Division I athlete and go to like Tennessee, or could you see that early, or how was his growth?
Yeah, I think it took a little bit of time. Again, he's one of those kids that we had in AAU, and he was in our camps, and he kind of grew into to high school. We brought him up, as quickly as we could as an 8th grader. He and Darius Miller kind of took somewhat of the same path. While I didn't get the opportunity to finish with Darius, he had a great finish to his career. And I was a big Rick Pitino fan as a coach in terms of style of play and how we did things, and that was huge on player development. Probably spent as much time on that piece of it, generating basketball players, as you did as trying to generate a style of play. So we spent tons of time doing that. So you could see glimpses of how good Chris was going to be as an individual, because he could just do all the skills. He could dribble, pass it, shoot it with the best of them. But it took him a little while to kind of get into his body. Through the recruiting process, the words you heard were maybe he's not as fast as you need to be to get to the next level. Maybe he doesn't jump as high. He's not as big as you need at the next level. But the things that people couldn't put into their evaluation was that we never, ever lost a basketball game that Chris Lofton had the ball in his hands, which is uncanny for a kid who started since he was a freshman. So he was a special, unique player, probably spoiled me for the rest of my career, but one of those kids that just is a generational type player. And I could tell probably early in his sophomore year that he was going to be something special. Now, after his junior year, then he nailed that shut, that he was going to be one of the best ever. So just a really fine young man, and one of those kids that you hope your son or daughter turns out to be as good of a kid as he is.
Mm-hmm. Landon, we'll go over to you.
Yeah, you talked about community just a little bit. How important is it to you to get out in the community and make connections with those who support your program, whether it be high school, college, or whatever you're in?
It's critical. It's one of my most important prized things that I think I do as a coach, also as a director, is to get in our community and really be a gathering type personality. I think that's one of my areas of strength, is I never forgot about our communities. It was so important to do this public speaking, to get out and get involved into a local church, and to make sure that you're doing the right things by your student athletes. And you don't just turn that off because you're not at school, or you don't just turn that off because you're not at practice. So community is extremely important. Now, I will say, being back home in this role intensifies that to a greater degree for me, because there's not an option for failure in your hometown. Like, you want to do it right, you want to do it well. That adds a little bit of pressure. It adds a little more of the hustle muscle in terms of getting out and trying to do the right things by this region and this town. So it's a great question, and that is certainly a big piece of my identity as a leader.
Could you just speak a little bit about what the transition's been like for you, being head coach at Pikeville to now the athletic director at Morehead State?
Yeah, there's been some learning throughout the whole process. I think one of the biggest advantages I have as an athletic director is that I was a coach. I think a lot of times in that role, there's business folks, there's people that are on the educational side only. I think the perspective I have as a coach gives me a greater advantage than any athletic director that doesn't have that background, because I can empathize with our coaches. I can kind of see what's out in front. I know what good coaching looks like. I've been in that area, been in that world. So I think my coaches and our staff really appreciates that I understand when to have certain conversations and when not to have certain conversations, and understanding needs, understanding wants, and understanding wishes. I think gives me a great advantage. So I'm thankful, and I think my staff has always appreciated the fact that I have a perspective from a coach and understand their world a little bit better.
Have there been any differences that you've noticed coming from an NAIA school to a Division I school?
Yeah, no question there is. I think the NCAA rules and regulations are a little bit intense, trying to keep up with those, and I think our staffing has been a big difference in that. At an NAIA level school, you're really a one or two man wolf pack. I mean, you do everything from getting the schedule set up for cleaning your building all the way to game day management, hiring your radio and TV staff. And at the NCAA level, it has a lot more responsibilities, but you also have more people to kind of help you in those kind of things. So there have been some changes in that regard. I'm so thankful and blessed to have just an amazing staff here at Morehead State, and we really get a whole lot done, even though we are, in theory, probably undermanned in all our department as well, and trying to figure out all the things that need to be done. We accomplish a whole lot as a good team.
One of the biggest topics of discussion right now across the board with the NCAA is NIL. Has that made your job as an athletic director more challenging?
Yeah, it's really a different world from what we did as college student athletes to even my initial transition into being an athletic director. The NIL, the transfer market, has been overwhelmingly impactful in what we try to do on a day-to-day basis. It's going to continue to change. I mean, every 6 months there's a new settlement. Every 6 months there's a new expectation from a student-athlete perspective. And, like I mentioned earlier, the only guarantee you have with student-athletes now is about an eight-month period to have an impact at your university. And then, there's opportunities for transfers. And, while some of it I think is extremely healthy, I think it puts the student-athlete in the lead position to make decisions, but it's also really giving you a hard time to really advance and to try to make some progress towards graduation in some respects, and maybe even progress in your program.
Yeah, so being athletic director, there's a lot of challenges trying to make sure that all your sports programs across the board are succeeding at a high level. So how do you make sure that happens, and what are some challenges that can, prevent that from happening?
Yeah, that's a big question. So there's a lot of things that go into generating what I call a complete success story in all of your athletics, and a lot of that begins with leadership. I think the leadership at the top has to really truly believe and show that a high tide lifts all boats. Trying to get everybody's program to a higher level versus trying to minimize a certain program to make sure another program comes up. That is not a great structure and a great philosophy. I think coaching is extremely important in that market. I believe coaches have a great impact on levels of success, and I'm certainly a big believer that winning is just a byproduct of doing a whole lot of things right. So when you have good coaches who are doing a lot of things right, on the other side of that becomes success, and success looks different for everyone. Is a undefeated season and a championship the only part that you look at as success? That's not going to be the case at Morehead State. I think the process and the education piece, the good mental health services, the good opportunities to be good student athletes and people is a part of that process. And then the other part of that is, your resources have to match your expectations. So if we expect Morehead State to beat Kentucky in the SEC, we're going to be greatly disappointed. So I think trying to find our successes at our resource level is incredibly important while we're continuing to grow those resources. And that's where the NIL, the operating budgets, the fundraising opportunities, all of that goes into success, because recruiting is a huge piece of that. Having great facilities, having great things is very, very important. A university campus has to be thriving, and if it's not, it shows. And it's no different than a lot of different markets. It's the haves and the have-nots, and you've got to make sure that you're one of those people that are continuing to grow, or you'll get behind real quick.
You spoke about making sure that you have the right coaches in place. So what does kind of the hiring process look like for you when it comes time to hire a new coach, and how do you make sure that you're not going to be put in the position again in a couple of years to make that choice coming up?
Well, it's very similar to the transfer world of student athletes. I don't think there's any way you guarantee that someone's going to stay for a long period of time. Our goal is to try to find the people who fit Morehead State University as best as it possibly can be fit. There are a lot of good coaches out there. There are a lot of people that do a really, really good job. The key is finding people who fit, the culture, the expectation, and the university and the community. So that's a big step of that piece. Second piece of that is trying to keep coaches happy is maybe not the right word, but trying to keep coaches appreciated, let them know that this is a coach. I know some of those trigger points. I know the things that keep coaches satisfied, keep their mental health well, to keep them moving in a good direction. So I think showing our appreciation from a director's position, I've never said, I'm your boss. That's not the word I use. I partner with our coaches. I want to see them do good. I want to be a person that's not afraid to pick up the broom with them. I'm on the bus traveling with them. I show up at their games. I show up on their trips with them. And that's a big piece to trying to show that there's probably not a ton of athletic directors that make the trips on the buses with the student athletes, that meet with every recruit that comes on campus. And I try to be all of that to our coaches to try to give them the best resource and the best opportunity for success as we can.
Turner, I'll turn it back over to you.
So going back to coaching at U Pike, you won the 2011 national championship in NCAA. Going into that year, I know that just like every year, your goal is to win, but what made your 2011 team special?
I knew they were going to be talented. I knew we had a group that had a lot of the pieces to it. The NAI level really, for us as the Mid-South Conference at that time, was very, very similar to the world we live in now with this transfer market. Like, you're going to rebuild your roster, almost every year, and if not every other year, in terms of the depth and having enough returners and then newcomers. So I knew it'd take us a little bit of time to gel correctly, but we did. We showed progress as we were going. And we were the very last team to get into the tournament, and we played every ranked team all the way through as high as you possibly could go. So for me to say that we expected to win that tournament would be naive of me to say. So I knew we had a good team, and I knew we were getting better as the season went on. But when we got to Kansas City, we just something clicked in us. We became a very connected group. We were undeniable. I don't know who you'd have put in front of us that we wouldn't have found a way to win. It's just one of those feelings, and a very calm feeling as a coach that we knew we were going to be prepared. We knew we had all the elements. We had depth, and it didn't matter if we had foul trouble. We had someone that wasn't playing well. We always had next man up mentality, and it just really just fell in place, and we got more confident in every game that we played, and it just became one of those seasons to remember forever. And a lot of special performances from student athletes.
Mm-hmm. So after your playing days and you played at Morehead State, how does it feel to join back on the staff and be the athletic director of your alma mater?
Yeah, it's about as good a feeling as you can have, Turner, to be honest with you. I've been in a lot of different worlds and different schools, and I've been blessed to be at nothing but great places with great people. And it's no different for now, to be able to have the journey to come back home to a place that you love and cherish and care about. Really, most people don't get that opportunity, especially at the level that I'm sitting at. So I'm extremely blessed, extremely thankful, want to do the very best work I can. But I don't take anything for granted. I am very appreciative of the opportunity to have an impact over the university. being a partner with our coaches and our university. I'm just as proud to be at the school where I got my 2 business degrees as I am to be the athletic director over the sporting events and sporting program. So a lot of pride. I think everywhere I go in the last 12 months, I've had nothing but blue and gold on and the Moorhead logo on it. So I couldn't be more proud to be in this position and serve this great university.
Mm-hmm. So I know that you're a athletic director, like we've talked about a lot already, but with some of the questions that I have written down, it's mainly basketball related, and of course you were a basketball coach. What would be your pitch for if you're, say, a Power 5 like basketball coach for an athlete to go the college route instead of going pro?
Well, haven't been asked that question. That's a good one. I think anytime that you have a growth mentality, that takes precedent over going just to make money. I have always learned, my father taught me in an early age, is don't chase money. It's a poor way to keep score. Nowadays, if you're at a Power 5 or even a Power 6 university, you can almost sadly match what they're going to make financially when they move to the next level. So to have the opportunity to stay in college, chase your degree, and chase your growth gives you a really advantage on some folks that come up and you may get set 2 or 3 years before you actually get to start playing, where if you stay at that Power 5, you stay at that Power 6, it gives you an opportunity to grow, have that college experience. And like, as I look back on life, there was nothing that I cherished more than my time in college and at Moorhead State University. So I think being able to have that opportunity to really be one of those local stars in your community, but also play for a national championship at the NCAA level, still making financial gains in your life, but also growing as a person, growing as a student, but also growing as a basketball player really gives you an advantage for later on to get that professional career and just get it jump started.
Mm-hmm. So not whenever, but you coached high school too, like we talked about. What are your thoughts on the lack of transfer rules these days with Kentucky high school sports?
Yeah, I have great respect for the KHSAA. It was one of the greatest things ever for me as a player. The Kentucky Indiana All-Star Game was one of the greatest experiences I've ever been through. Same with coaching. I love everything about it, but I think the whole dynamic of transfer is just overwhelmed everyone, and that's for the KHSAA level. That's at the college level. I think it's just become a way of life in the NBA now. Everybody just goes to the next team to try to build a power team versus back in the day, and I hate to be that guy, but back in the day where you had a team and you stuck to it for 10 years and you tried to win you a championship, a.k.a. the Charles Barkleys of the world. Nowadays, who's going to move to the next team to try to build a power team? And that has no other way but to trickle down, and it trickled down into college athletics, and now it's trickled down into high school athletics. And it's not going to be any different. The NIL world's coming to the high school world just like it is at the college level, and those kind of things just happen. So I don't love that. Certainly, we can all sit down and write the things we hate in life, or we can just chalk those up as things we've got to make sure to be problem solvers and figure them out. And I think most people are in the point now that they're just going to sit down and try to be problem solvers and figure it out versus complaining about it.
Mm-hmm. Landon, we'll go back to you.
Yeah, so has there been any challenges going against, the NIL and transfer portal with Power 5 conferences, or do you guys have a system in place at Moorhead that kind of puts you guys in a good spot?
Yeah, there's no question we've had challenges with that. Every kid that steps foot on a campus at a Division I level, they're going to ask you one question immediately: is what does your collective look like, and how much money am I going to make? That's no different from Moorhead State University to the University of Notre Dame to the University of Louisville. Like, that's going to be the questions the students are asking. However, the NCAA does not permit us to have that conversation in those meetings. But you and I and everybody knows that that's not the way things are going down. So, like, it is a problem. Like, kids that come to our campus will say, "Hey, listen, such and such is offering me a NIL deal of X amount of dollars. There's often payments of X amount of dollars. we get our cost of attendance money and our FAFSA money. Here's how much I'm going to have in my pocket. Can you match that? So it is a competitive market. It's almost like being a business manager versus an athletic director a lot of times. And we're venturing out into all of those things. So we have cost of attendance payments. We have Austin payments. We're going to be announcing our Blue Gold Alliance collective in the next month. While we certainly still have a collective, it's more of a retention mechanism versus a recruiting mechanism. But we're growing in that. And, the OVC has a lot of like institutions, and we certainly do things very similar across the board, but that doesn't match to what the Missouri Valley is doing. That doesn't match to what Conference USA is doing. That doesn't match to what the SEC is doing. So there are the haves and the have-nots, and we certainly are giving opportunities for student athletes to have monies, but we are nowhere tip of the iceberg to what a Power 5 or a Power 6 school is doing.
When you got to Moorhead, were there any sort of surprises that, some people think Moorhead lacked in one area, but you think it's not something of an issue?
Yeah, there's always things that you see around every corner. So for me coming in, the only reference point I had was when I was a student and a student athlete there. Now that's been several years ago. So, for me, one of the things I really wanted to make my MO was that we were going to talk about the positive and the things that we had going on great, like our coaches. We have a lot of great facilities there. We have a great community there. But there are certainly things that needed addressed. And we tried to come in and do some of those kind of things. And facilities were one of the areas I really wanted to work on. I wanted to grow. I wanted our locker rooms to be nicer. I wanted our playing services to be nicer. I wanted to have more student-athlete services. So we really have jumped in and hit the ground running on trying to make those changes, and we put a big dent in that, but there's no finish line. We've got to continue to work that. Just our overall resources, and again, this is getting in the weeds. Our athletic operating budget is not comparative to very many in-state schools in terms of what they're providing, athletic budget-wise. So we really have to do a great job of earning trust in our communities, really getting out there and trying to make promotions to get private monies donated. We have a great foundation at the university that gives us opportunities to grow, to give infrastructure for our coaches' contracts and things of that nature. But that's an area we've got to continue to grow. We've been blessed to do, we've had the winningest men's basketball program in the state of Kentucky over the last 5 years. That includes all of them. That's Kentucky, Louisville, Western. Throw them all in. We're significantly higher in our winning percentages than any of those, and we're proud of that. So we've been able to do a whole lot with less, but we want to continue to grow that less and make it more.
Social media nowadays is continuing to grow at a rapid pace, and it's probably going to continue to do that. So what are some things that you would like to see Moorhead do to, kind of get yourself ahead of the game in some areas?
Well, you've got to get out there in the public, and that's a part of the public. So if you don't know how much you follow Moorhead State social media, we just started a bunch of series. One of the first hires I had was a video coordinator who does special projects in athletics, David Patrick, who worked at KYT. He does an amazing job of getting our information out. We do specials on coaches. We do special. I actually just started a series from the desk of the AD, Kelly Wells, where we talk about all things athletics, very similar to what we're doing on this podcast, just talking about, where are growth areas, what are things we're doing well, where are important dates, what's homecoming, to try to get that information out. And as you know, this generation lives on social media. This generation lives on videos, trying to get that information out and keeping the content, unique, hip, something people want to click on. And we do all platforms of social media through athletics. I personally just do X to try to get out information of that way, but our athletics does all of those to try to get the word out. It gives us an opportunity to connect our alums, gives us an opportunity to connect to recruiting, but also to just the general public in the region to try to get the word out about what we're doing. That's special here at Moorhead State.
Title IX nowadays has been a big topic of discussion. It's been around for quite a while, and it's continuing to evolve. And also, as an athletic director, there's also opportunities to add programs and organizations to the university. So how do you determine when it's a good time to add a program or two, as well as some organizations to the university?
Yeah, the diversity, equity, inclusion piece is extremely important to us. We talk about this. We're conscious about this on a daily basis. in hirings, that's a big part of what we try to do is make sure that we are very inclusive in our approach. The same with our sports. So we are actually a little bit on the low side on gender equity in our sports. We have 15 sports, and we're probably in a phase of our next edition will be a women's sport. We have football that generates almost 119, 120 student athletes, and that's a heavy thing in a 400-person athletic department. That's a heavy load of that. So you have high roster sports such as baseball. That's offset a little bit by women's soccer, but definitely our next edition will be an all-women's sport.
For some Morehead State fans or anyone that is tuned into Morehead State, what are some things that we can expect to see in the near future over at Morehead?
Yeah, and I'll jump back to 2 questions ago. I think following us on all of our outlets, our website, msueagles.com, is a great resource to kind of keep up. All of our platforms on social media kind of get those things going. The next big things are announcements of season. So we're really getting ready to release all of our fall sports. We've got volleyball coming up. We've got football coming up. We got women's soccer coming up. So all of those announcements are getting ready to come. We're trying to get through our summer camps. A lot of our our summer 2 groups are coming onto campus to start practicing, to start getting ready. Men's basketball is already on campus getting ready. And those are the next big flurry of information that we're going to throw out there is about our student athletes and looking at our new rosters, checking out our new student athletes, and getting geared up for this 2024 year.
Being a coach, you know the importance of the staff around you, and if I read it correctly, the NCAA just passed a rule, I guess, in effect this year to where staffs can be unlimited on college athletic teams. Do you find that as an advantage, or do you think that's going to be a disadvantage as to having too many people on a staff?
It just kind of depends where you're at. So at Morehead State, it will give us an opportunity for some of our coaches to be able to do more recruiting and calls and things of that nature. When it comes to getting on the road, that hasn't changed a whole lot. So in men's basketball, you've got 6 staff members. All 6 of those can make phone calls and recruiting in that regard, but you're only sending 4 out on the road. So we still have some of those constraints in there. But you look at a Power 5, for an example, a football program, there's a countless array of coaches that you have in that regard. Now you look at Morehead State, for an example, it's non-scholarship football. We don't have all of those same resources. So that doesn't affect us in a huge, huge way there. But certainly to be able to utilize all of our coaches at a high level and being effective is very, very important to us. So those rules do give us opportunities to let coaches grow and to continue to build. And our biggest thing is to try to build relationships with our student athletes, and that gives them more opportunities to do that.
Or no, I'll go back to you.
So I'm going to transition into a different thing with, so Coach, I'm guessing you still watch a good amount of basketball?
I do.
Who are some of your favorite players to watch nowadays?
Well, I'll be transparent. I am not a huge NBA fan. Controversy, not whatever. I have a hard time watching just a side ball screen or a middle ball screen. So that doesn't fill my cup up to be able to watch the NBA and just take bad shots and shoot. I'm much more interested in watching college athletics. So I think watching programs, I'll list some of these. I thought our team last year was extremely fun to watch because they played defense. They passed the basketball. They shot it in the basket when it was open. Teams like Belmont are teams I love to watch play basketball. Just things of structure. I think I enjoy more as I've gotten older than just running up and down the court, taking a shot, and not playing any defense or rebounding, getting back. Those kind of things probably drive me crazy more now than they used to. So I think structured teams give me a little better understanding of watching basketball and appreciating it more. But the NBA for me is certainly not my cup of tea, my favorite thing to watch anymore.
No, I get you. I mainly just watch the playoffs nowadays.
It's very similar to that, and I try. There's certain teams I don't like watching even in the playoffs where it's just one pass and a 3-point shot or a side pick and roll, and I try to draw a foul and then whine about not getting a foul. So it's just hard to watch.
Yeah. I have a feeling I know who you're going to say for this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What's your stance on the Michael Jordan-LeBron debate?
Oh, I'm a Michael Jordan 365 days a year, every single time. I don't think there's even a comparison now. LeBron is a great player. He's got a great body of work. but I think Michael Jordan is by far, I should say by far, but it's definitely, in my mind, a better all-around success story than what LeBron is.
Mm-hmm. So whenever I originally had this question, the game of basketball is a little different, but now it's kind of changing. Do you think the traditional big man is coming back?
I think with the European play, some of the traditional big men are coming back. So you're looking at guys like Wembley and folks that are super, super huge. Has been offset a little bit with some post players. So I do think there's a little bit of shift. The Golden State era of play where everybody was a skilled 4-man or below, and that's kind of what you went with, and stretching the defense to make sure you spread out your driving lanes. I think that's still a piece of it. But I'm with you. I do think that there's a shift of the traditional big men really starting at the high post and kind of working their way into the box. But there are some bigger folks that are coming into the game, and Zach Edey's of the world have probably given it opportunities just because of their size to have more dominant posts in there. I think the women's game has shown that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the three-point shooting has been a great addition. I think there's some great three-point shooters in the WNBA and even women's college basketball. There has been a shift of really, really good post players who can score in the box, but are also good rebounders. And that's anytime the ball touches the paint and the post, that helps in your efficiency, and you're seeing a lot of that in the WNBA.
Mm-hmm. So this will be a two-part question because, of course, you coached basketball for a while and now being athletic director. So my first part of the question is mainly just basketball. What changes would you like to see to any level of basketball?
I think the shot clock would be a great addition to high school. I believe it should be a super quick shot clock, and I don't know what the right number is. I think we do it in some of these exhibition games in the NCAA of maybe even doing that during the preseason in high school to kind of see how that goes. But it doesn't change the game in a negative way, but it does kind of make some speed to it. And I do get the advantage disadvantage. I do get the taking bad shots at the end of the shot clock, and that's where coaching comes into play. Better coaching keeps you from being able to do that. So I think I'd like to see that shot clock come into play. I love the advance of the basketball. Women's basketball does it. I really just think a shift to the Olympic rules would be very, very good for basketball. And those are the rule changes I think I'd like to see.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to see any rule changes to any other sport?
Oh, yeah. That's great. I think the change that I like the most, especially as an athletic director, is the pace of play in baseball and softball. Having the pitch clocks. I mean, you take a baseball game that would take you 5 hours, 4.5 hours, has really condensed into a 2.5, 3 hour deal. I think that pace of play has been very, very good, and actually makes it much more easy to watch. The speed of the game is better. I think there's continuity on getting in and out of the dugouts. I just think that's been a great rule change. I think I'm going to say this lightly. I'd like to see them change the replay effectiveness in football. I think it just becomes a little bit drawn out where it can be so much easier. And really, frankly, officials don't get as much as I used to bitch and complain as a coach. Officials don't get a whole lot of those wrong. So I think it should be a shorter process, quicker process to get those decisions to the field, because I do think that breaks up kind of what you're doing. I love getting it right. I'm a big proponent of that, but I do think we can speed that process up and make it a little more effective.
Mm-hmm. Landon, do you have any more questions?
I think the only question I have left, and it's one we ask all of our guests that come on here. Being a coach and an athletic director, you have two viewpoints from your time in a college athletics administration. So what are some advice that you give to someone that would want to be a head coach in the college world as well as an athletic director?
Well, I think first off is finding, what I tried to do as a young coach is I kept a bunch of notebooks. So no matter what environment I was in, whether it was a high school environment, I was in a 5-star camp, or I was at a coach's clinic, or I was actually working at my current job, is I wrote down things in a notebook. These were kind of my dreams, my things that I never wanted to forget. When I saw something that was bad, I wrote down, like, this is something you don't want in your your career. You don't want to do this part. When I saw something good, I wrote it down. So I tried to keep journals of things that would prepare me when I got to different positions or to do better in what I was trying to do. I'm a big note taker. I'm big at writing my goals down. I'm big at chasing leadership qualities. So I think reading and the people that you're around really change the trajectory of what your career could be. So I would encourage folks to read as many good quality books as you possibly can. Never forget the Bible being the most important, and other things of that nature are to really get out and take notes and watch people and take the good. Sometimes your best learning experience is seeing something bad that you don't want to do. That's a great learning experience because you can stay away from it when you actually get to implement. So I think reading, observing, and finding good mentors is what I would suggest. That's my last question.
So my last question before we wrap up is kind of a new one. I don't even know if Landon knows about this one. So what I'm preparing to do, and Coach, you are the first one that I'm trying this out with.
All right, let's see it.
Yeah, so at the end of every episode, and sadly you don't get one of these because you're the first one, but I'm going to have our guest ask a question for the next guest. So it'll probably be a coach or something like that, or someone like that in the sports world, like we talked about. So what is one question that you have for our future guest?
I would ask your next future guest is what they feel like has been the most impactful thing that they've been able to push forward to their coaching or their directors or whatever. What has been the most impactful thing that they've been able to take from their experience and give that to the next generation?
Well, there we go. That's a powerful question right there.
I mean, there's a lot to that. That may be the only question you got to ask.
Yeah, that'll be the whole episode from there. Yeah. Well, we won't take up much more of your time, Coach. We appreciate you coming on. This was definitely a great episode. I hope that we gave you some good questions that could be both challenging and just get you to think a little bit.
You guys were awesome. Great questions. Some I'd never even had before. And I try to do these all the time. So you guys are doing great work. Keep up the good work, and please tell Will I said hello when you get a chance to speak to him next.
I got you. All right, that does it. Sounds good. I appreciate y'all hopping on, and talk to y'all later.
Okay, appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Coach.
See y'all. All right, that does it for our episode. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.